Well, Pamela Giardino cannot be with us tonight, but is someone going to speak on Pam's behalf? Sorry.
Good evening, everyone. So I have the pleasure of saying a few words about Pam Giardino. Pam has been with us since September of 1996 as a cook, pretty much the entire time at Warren Street. Pam has definitely been involved in our transition over to Capital Region BOCES for our food service program. So since 2021, she's been actually employed by Capital Region BOCES as one of our cooks. But she's been instrumental in bringing the food service program out of a long-standing deficit with some of the changes that we've made through the program. I believe, speaking to Erica Winnie today, who's the food service director, who has had some conversations with Pam. During her retirement, she's going to spend more time with her two daughters, and she's going to visit her father in Florida. So we wish Pam well in her retirement.
And I noticed Earl Harris, who retired a little bit early, is not here either, but he must have someone rooting for him there.
Earl Harris actually started just a little bit after I did in the district. He's here over 15 years. He started out as a food service courier for the district and became a day custodian worker. He worked in many buildings, and Earl was always the first one to go wherever you needed him. He's actually part of the family legacy. His son works here as a groundsman, and his wife is still here as a food service worker. So, and rather than taking time off and enjoying his retirement, he went right to work full time. And that's just the way Earl always was.
Thank you, Jim. Now, Nancy Hohenforth, speech language pathologist, could not be here either. I'm sure there's someone here. Nikki.
So Nancy Hohenforth, again, I probably have two speeches prepared, but I'll go with this. She has been with us since 1999, so 26 years, and she was in a different district even before that as a speech and language pathologist. Nancy is another one of those who is known for her quick wit and humor. Everyone knows her, knows that. But she's also very dedicated to our students and families. And if there's ever anything you ever needed to know about a family, she would know it. She knows everybody. She knows everybody's phone number. She knows how everybody's related. She knows everything about everybody. It's just amazing to me. But she builds great connections with those families, and she does get to know them very well. They entrust their children to her, and she's done a remarkable job with them. So we will definitely be missing her. She's been with us a long time, and those are very big shoes to fill.
And of course, Nancy and I graduated together. It's our 40th reunion coming up this summer, so it's pretty exciting. Missy Miles is next, and I'd like someone to speak on her behalf as well. Nikki's got lots of responsibilities.
Scott gave me a list, sorry. So Scott said he would like to recognize Melissa Miles, or as Johnstown coined her from the beginning, Missy. Missy has taught around 2,000 Johnstown students in her 3 decades in our district. She's taught math at every level up until now, where she's finishing her career teaching Algebra 2, Pre-Calc, and Calculus. She's also put many years into advising the National Honor Society. Many students will remember her as the best dancer at the prom, I'm told. Her ability to connect with students will never be forgotten. Missy, you will not be forgotten, and everyone appreciates and has appreciated you so much. Best luck in your
retirement. I've always wanted to be a Melissa. My mom didn't want to name me Melissa, she wanted Alyssa, but my grandmother said no. I got worked here. Mr. Carndamore walked in, and he goes, "Oh, Missy's here!" You know, oh great, I get to be Missy again. But thank you.
You want to say anything else? You're welcome to.
I don't know if there's anything else to say. Doc, you said it all perfectly. I mean, when I got hired here, Pete Procopio, his only question to me, being a Gloversville student, is could I wear purple and gold? And I hope that I've worn it because I've enjoyed every minute here. And I still have my pom-poms, and I still hope to use them, and go to the prom, because I've enjoyed every minute here. And it hasn't hit me yet, but as I've seen some of the kids, I'm getting worried it's going to hit me hard, because It's been a wonderful ride here, and I've loved every minute of it, and I don't consider myself a Gloversville girl anymore. I mean, I'm a Johnstown girl now. I feel like that's the way it is. I'm purple and gold forever now, it seems. So thank you very much. It's been wonderful.
Thank you, Missy. I'd like to acknowledge Marilyn Pinkerton, who's in the front row, as I said, and does someone have Nikki?
So Miss Marilyn, I'm so glad you came. So excited to see her because she retired earlier in the school year and then snuck away, so I had to see her. Miss Marilyn came as a one-to-one aide to our district several years back. She was with me at Warren Street and then up here at the high school with a student. Just the most kind-hearted person you could ever meet, and she has so much to give to students. Not only the students she was assigned to, but all of the students that she came into contact with. You would never ever see her without a smile on her face. Doesn't matter what's going on, always a smile on her face. Just one of the most kindest, most compassionate, and wonderful people I've ever met. So you're so very missed, and I'm so excited for all your trips and adventures that are going on.
Awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And last but not least, I think Judy Subic is retiring, another food service worker. I think Alicia said this is.
So Judy is another long-standing employee of the district. She started about a year later than Pam. Started in 1995. She's continued to be a food service helper all that time. This year she was at the high school, and Judy has definitely spent time in all of our schools. But now she's looking forward to retirement. You know, she has her daughter and her grandkids, and she plans to spend much more time with them. So we thank her for her service again during a time of transition in the food service department and all the new ideas that our new food service director has brought forth over the last couple of years. So just like to wish Judy well after her retirement.
Okay, so I wanted to present a little something to each of our retiring board members. We'll start with Ron Beck. And Ron, you've been with the board for 6 years?
15.
15! Okay, so I need to pay attention. I've been with the board for 6 years.
Yeah.
So, okay, 15, I did not recognize that as, wow. All right, well, congratulations for making it that long. So those of you who don't know the commitment that goes into being a board member, it is evening work, it's committee work, it's board service at these meetings, and it's also being a face out in the community. So when there is controversy, somebody has somebody to talk to. And Ron has done this for 15 years, and admirably, I will add to that, always on top of the issues that were of importance, and we want to commend you for your long-standing contribution to the district, not only at board service, but in your teaching career as well and coaching career. So thank you for your service, and happy retirement. I hope you get to travel a little bit.
If you allow me, you need to keep things in perspective here when Ron is concerned. So he was my teacher, my social studies teacher. To be his superintendent is pretty full circle, pretty neat honor. But I have to tell you, in 15 years, some of you who've been here for 15 years know what has gone on in this district. So if you think back to July 1st, 2009, when he first came on the board, Jansen had just closed. And then Mrs. Sullivan, I think, was superintendent at the time. And then we had 2011 come around. There were about 1,800 students in the district, about 2011. 2013, we decided to go from neighborhood schools to grade level grouping schools. And then 2014, P-TECH took over after a short experiment in Jansen Avenue. And 2020, Glebe closed, different superintendent. So Sullivan, DeLilly, Kilburn, Gielan, just while he's on the board. And Crankshaw. That's fun. And we closed Knox building in 2020. 2019, 2020, if you remember, that was the 14% tax levy increase, and a tough time for the district where we lost 20% of the staff. some programming. It was tough times, and a lot of people on the back table made it through that as well. The first year of school configuration, and hopefully where we'll stay for a very long time, was this year. And then we're going to year 2 of more stability, and I think we have a lot to thank Ron for. He's seen a lot, and he's still here, and that's to be commended.
So, last but not least, we have Art Schrum, who's finishing up his 3-year term on the board. And Art, I know you don't have the longevity that Ron has. That's a hard standard to meet by any kind of measure.
You get pretty close to
So I wanted to thank you for your service. You came in at a very difficult time in the district, coming in right on the heels of COVID. Right on the heels of a lot of financial upheaval, fiscal challenges. You brought a very sharp eye to our fiscal responsibilities, and I think you've helped us all maintain a sharp look and view on that part of our management process. And you've helped keep me honest in terms of my perspective on things, and I think that's really important to have those kind of opportunities to interact with your colleagues that bring different views and perspectives to this process. And I want to thank you for that. And to both of you, congratulations and best wishes in your post-service life. So.
I would just like to thank everyone on board for offering me the opportunity to be here and give them different opinions. I want to specifically thank Dr. Crankshaw for his thorough explanations and everything going on this way, especially during my first year, to make sure that I understood everything that was going on. Okay. And if anybody sees me out here again, my name's Mark. Not Mr. Straw. Thank you.
And just one more thing. You need to know that Art did come on the heels of COVID, as some of these board members did. And that was no small feat to guide us through masking, through not masking, the political piece of that. But Art has managed, together with many people on this board, to build us up as a school district who values teachers, who values their employees, and offers fiscal stability to the school district. And all those things Dave said are absolutely true. He served on the Audit, Budget, and Finance Committee, the Facilities Committee, and I think we have a trajectory now, thanks to Art and other board members, that is going to be solid for the next, how many ever years. We got to keep it solid. Okay, thanks,
Okay, so next up we have recognition of Scholar Athlete teams. So, how best to handle it? Should
I think you should just say the names. Yeah, the sport.
Okay, so the New York State Public High School Athletic Association Scholar Athlete Team Award is designed to identify teams on which 75% of the roster have maintained a GPA of 90 or above during that sports season. If a student maintains a GPA of 90 or above, but the team has not, the student is recognized as an individual scholar athlete. If for the 2023-24 school year, the following Johnstown teams and student athletes have been recognized with the NYSPHSAA Scholar Athlete Award. So I want you to understand it's a pretty long list, it's a pretty impressive list. And I think it's a testament to the work that the district is doing to keep our kids really engaged and active. So first up, we have cross-country individuals, coached by Lisa Van Arnhem, celebrating Devin DeMagistris, Elliot Haverly, Bianca Rorick, and Noah Rumrow. For field hockey, with a team average of 93.96, coached by Christine Krempa, we congratulate Ava Barker, Jenna Barker, Gabriella Chase, Josephine Eden, Addison Fazio, Parker Klingbeil, Juliana Kohout, Madeline Kramer, Caroline Krempa, Cole Krempa, Lucy Ledestro, Peyton Ellis, Gianna Rizzo, Molly Wilcox, and Kirsten Wilson. Football, team average of 90.78, coached by Paul Furman. We celebrate Carter Cheney, Ryan Hoyt, Anthony Isabella, Matthew Livingston, Trey Laux, Kyle Peristi, Hunter Smith, Samuel Stearns, Jonathan Swartout, Jonathan Vanderwalker, and Andrew Younger. Next we have golf with a team average of 93.35, coached by Jay Holland. Congratulating Antonio DeMarco, Braden Fennessy, Soraya Hawk, Molly Courts, Noah Malaka, Noah Stock, and Jay Wing. Soccer for girls with a team average of 95.03, coached by Erica Fitzpatrick. Celebrating Anna G. Rizzo, Chelsea Johnson, Aylin Naselli, Olivia Stremezzi, Lindsay Sweet, Jordan Tarbox, Marley Trelanek, Kelsey Walker, and Ashlyn Weaver. Boys soccer with a team average of 92.65, coached by Tommy Horning. We congratulate Daniel Brown, Braden Fennessy, Mason Gray, Jacob Hanna, David Jerabek, Landon Laird, Gage Ledestra, Caleb San Giorgio, and Elijah Wager. Volleyball with a team average of 93.07, coached by Holly Livingston. Celebrating Jalen Crispin, Shay Donahue, Abigail Lewis, Gabriela Martinez, Daya Patel, and Mercedes Windecker. Boys Alpine Ski with a team average of 92.0, coached by Eric Cheney. We celebrate Carter Cheney, Wyatt Cox, and Jacob Hanna. Girls Alpine Ski with a team average of 97. We celebrate Sophia Idol Conan, Embry Fielding, and Natalie Laporte. Boys basketball individuals, coached by Phil Satterley. We have Antonio DeMarco, Braden Fennessy, and Ryan Hoyt. Girls basketball with a team average of 95.81, coached by Brandon Hilliard. We have Ava Barker, Lindsey Brown, Allison Gray, Parker Klingbeil, Molly Courts, Madeline Kramer, Peyton Nigro, Olivia Stremezzi, Jordan Tarbox, Marley Traumack, and Molly Wilcox. Boys Nordic Ski, individuals, coached by Jennifer Sweeney. We're congratulating Elliot Haverly, Noah Malika, and Noah Romero. Girls Nordic Ski, with a team average of 97.0, coached by Jennifer Sweeney, Hannah Conti, and Ayla Naselli. Swimming and diving with a team average of 93, coached by Juliana Pop, Benjamin Borth, Jacelyn Bush, McKenna Bush, Cashton Delmata, Caden Harris, Ava Jennings, Caroline Krempa, Cole Krempa, and Caleb San Giorgio. Wrestling with a team average of 90.29, coached by John Paris. We celebrate Matthew Livingston, Trey Laux, Jonathan Swartout, Owen Lewis from Fonda, Zane Chase from Fonda, Ryan Lewis from Fonda, Colin Pickering from Fonda, and Anthony McLaughlin from Fonda. Baseball individuals, coached by John Jennings. We have Tavian Flowers, Daniel Brown, Carter Cheney, and Jacob Hanna. Boys lacrosse individuals, coached by Rob Virtue. We have Cashton Delmata, Elliot Haverly, Caden Harris, David Jerabek, Caleb San Giorgio, Sam Stearns, Jonathan Swartout, and Matthew Wheels. Girls lacrosse with a team average of 91, coached by Tom Horning. We celebrate Jenna Barker, McKenna Bush, Harper Davis, Josephine Eaton, Addison Fazio, Allison Gray, Caroline Krempa, Gianna Rizzo, and Kira Sullivan. Girls track and field with a team average of 92.0. We have Coach Melissa Kazuba. Celebrating Ava Barker, Gabriella Chase, Hannah Conti, Lauren Draper, Anna Girizzo, Parker Klingbeil, Cole Krempa, Lucy Ledestro, and Ayla Naselli. Boys track and field, individuals, coached by Melissa Kazuba. We have Mason Barter, Devin D. Magistris, Jackson Green,
Sorry.
Miles Rockland, Noah Rumnell. We have softball, team average of 91, coached by Katie McCumber. Celebrating Juliana Kohout, Gabriela Martinez, Bianca Rorick, Jordan Tarbox, Marley Trelanek, and Molly Wilcox. That's the full list, and you heard a lot of repeats in that list, which is, I think, a testament to their commitment to their extracurricular pursuits as well as their grades. So let's give everybody a round of applause.
It was a few years ago when we used to recognize these athletes at seasonally at our board meetings. They used to come and get a pin. Perhaps we could look at that again.
That's the board's wish, so we can talk to Mr. Kramer about that.
I believe that was consolidated into the awards banquet night because they were being pulled in several different directions. So
will they receive the pin that they did?
I think you'll see changes next year.
Okay.
That's me right now, but I think with Mr. Kramer, he's got some ideas. That's important.
Okay, so next up, we have comments from the public on agenda and non-agenda items. The Board of Education welcomes district residents, parents, students, and other people to our meeting. Community involvement at board meetings is encouraged so that we can better understand your views. Please be aware that individual student information or particular personnel issues will not be discussed by this board in public session. When recognized by the board president, please state your name and address. Statements are restricted to a maximum of 3 minutes, and speakers will be notified by the board president when the time has expired. When speaking, the public shall direct their comments to the board and not district staff or other audience members. Speakers shall not expect board members to answer questions during public comment. Questions shall be referred to the superintendent or his or her designee for review, study, and response. If appropriate, the board may request the issue be a discussion item at a future Board of Education meeting or Board of Education committee meeting. Is there anybody here who wishes to address the board at this time? Hearing none, we'll close that portion of the agenda, but I would like to let every one of the honorees know that if you wish to depart now and not stick around for the rest of the meeting, we completely understand. Take care. Okay, so next up, under public hearing, we have a public hearing on the code of conduct and restorative supports. So members of the public are welcome to submit written comments on the code of conduct and restorative supports to district administration for 14 days following this public hearing until June 27, 2024. At its July 2nd, 2024 organizational meeting, the Board of Education will consider a resolution to adopt the code of conduct and restorative supports. Dr. Craigshire, I believe, is going to offer us a presentation on the code.
Yep, and sorry you can't see me over there, but I think I'll try to keep it brief. In front of you, you have the code of conduct itself, the draft, and you also have this presentation in front of you. And for those of you in the audience, the meager few who haven't seen this already, the code of conduct was a year-long process. We realized that we needed to come to terms with the times, and a lot of items in our code of conduct were just honestly ancient, and I think some of the wording needed to be upgraded, and in light of many of the New York State Education Department's initiatives, they needed to be reflected in the code of conduct. So this is a public hearing, not required necessarily to have public comment after this, but we do have this open for public comment until the 14th, just in case people want to comment on it and read it. So the responsibility of the Board of Education is to adopt the code of conduct and to endorse it, and then they hire the superintendent and the administration to help enforce it. And just briefly, the responsibilities of the board are to post the code of conduct, provide copies of it, provide it in plain language developmentally for students who need plain language. Parenting, providing every existing educator with a copy, and then make complete copies available for viewing by students, obviously. So the timing of this was all done so we can do that over the summer, so we start September kind of fresh. And why change the code of conduct? I kind of alluded to that a little bit, because what we know works today is different than what worked since this was first initiated probably 70 or 80 years ago. And I don't think it's had a significant revision for all that time. And so in this code of conduct, it's every student's right to receive an education that's safe, civil, and caring in this environment. And you'll hear that a lot, especially those of you joining the board who haven't necessarily been with the board for a long time. If you've been a teacher or an educator recently, you've been hearing a lot about it, and I'm glad about it. The code serves as a guide for engaged citizenship, promoting character, behavior, helping everybody to understand the basics of what makes a school tick. And expectations are explicitly and simply stated in this handbook. We have discarded a lot of punitive and useless language and gone after this idea of educating students, helping them to understand what behaviors are expected, and not trying to turn them off from an institution that is like a jail, per se, but more as an educational institution. And finally, this code of conduct and restorative supports, as it's titled, demonstrates the commitment by the district to give all students equitable access to behavioral support and intervention. Very important, because we know that no student should receive, frankly, a consequence or expectation that at all takes into consideration their race, their weight, their national origin, any of those protected classes, and I'll just name a few more: religion, religious practice, taking into account where everyone kind of comes from once they gather here, disability, sexual orientation, sexual or gender expression or gender, socioeconomic status, the relational appearances, whether they're related to someone, in the school district. The familiar circumstances shouldn't be taken as predictors of student success. And up here in front of you is the timeline of efforts. You can see we sort of started in October, and here we are tonight, 6/13/24, in the public hearing. And I did say the public comment period will begin, and we have a special email for that. It'll be advertised through Parent Square, it'll be a press release, it'll also be on the website. And I'd like to give a shout out to those people who made this possible. We use this shared decision-making process fully for this effort. We started with the district shared decision-making team, who appointed an ad hoc district shared decision-making team and its subcommittees. We had 5 subcommittees, one who dealt with dress code, extracurriculars, substance abuse, restorative supports, and finally technology. Something that we didn't really have to worry about when this was first initiated. And inside of the Code of Conduct and Restorative Supports is broken down into the guiding principles. We really try to set the stage for what comes later in the document, which are expectations and consequences. And they are still there. And we're not tolerating bad behavior. It's just that we're setting it up a little bit differently and recognizing some of the important changes that students have to deal with. Cell phones are one of them. Drug abuse is on the rise, and the use of marijuana, vaping. Those things are addressed. Even dress code has a really fresh and new approach within the document. And then if you were to see this, this presentation online, you can go to this link and see the entire draft of the Code of Conduct for public comment. And this is what we'll put out to the public soon. And that's the gist of the public hearing portion. I don't know if you want to entertain any questions, Dave?
Well, I would ask if the board has any questions of the content of the code as it's been written.
Again, it will be public comment period because I don't think it's been fully fleshed out yet.
So I did want to ask if you could just talk a little bit about how you constructed this. I have a little bit of the history, but I think for benefit of public consumption, if you could sort of address how this came into this form. Because it wasn't just you sitting at a desk writing it.
Oh, no. Fortunately, I wasn't done yet either, but I will say, thanks to Dave, I'm reminded that Bob Kramer, who sits here, and Scott Hale, who doesn't sit here at the moment, they were instrumental in getting this code of conduct as an assignment off the ground, gathering the teams to work on that portion of it. And I also have to thank Tracy Ringer publicly. She really composed this document. She took a lot of her own time to do that, and she did a fantastic job. And so what you're seeing, if you go to the link, and the way it's constructed, and this computer won't do it justice, there's a, is that sort of answering your question, Danny?
Yeah, I just would like to know who are the people who are involved in constructing this, and what sort of peer review did it receive, and that sort of
okay, yeah, that's great.
process.
So initially, the district shared decision-making team came forward. I cited it as one of the issues that I think we need to grapple with in the coming years. And the shared decision-making team for the district was on board, suggesting that this is something we need to do immediately, and we can get this set up for the following year. And people might think that a year is a long time to work on a code of conduct, but this is people's volunteer time on behalf of the district. And so they took the time, we used our ad hoc committee and our subcommittees to grapple with these topics. We did research. We looked into other high-performing school districts' code of conduct, and we tried to replicate some of the good things that they had already done. And I'm not ashamed to say that. So the format you see here is really where many of the high-performing school districts have already gone into this sort of format. This is not what our code of conduct looked like previously. There's a welcome page, gives credit to those involved, the introduction. Again, we really set up, if people would just read the introduction, we set up why we even did this in the first place. And finally, we keep this child focused. And so everything comes back to the child, but you need to know that the code of conduct isn't just for children. It's for you, it's for our staff, it's for our educators, it's for our administrators, our visiting public. Everybody's covered through this code of conduct. So when you take a look at it, it really is a complete guide for everyone. And we have guiding principles involved, and we talk about personal responsibilities. We address diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. We talk about student engagement. We talk about restorative practices. What do they look like? How much time do they take? What kind of efforts are involved in restorative practices instead of just throwing a kid out of a room? We have follow-ups now, and we try to explain why the behavior was not acceptable, and then we try to set them on a course for success after that. And the rights and responsibilities, we do spend quite a bit of time on that for children, for parents, guardians, and caregivers, educators, principals, the superintendent, Board of Education, visitors. As you see, public conduct on school property is notoriously an issue sometimes, especially on Knox Field, especially when the public comes together, sometimes in the thousands. We have a hard time reining that in, but we have updated public conduct on the school property. We address attendance, early dismissal, and travel. We link to our attendance documents to this. We address drug and alcohol abuse, reimbursement for damage and stolen property. We talk about other laws. We address some things that people never heard of, such as Kratom. We address in this, and students' addiction to things other than just marijuana and tobacco and nicotine. Dress attire is addressed here, I think, with a pretty straightforward and simple, non-gender-based approach. Technology policies, cyberbullying is on the rise, inappropriate use of social media, and this goes to clarify what our expectations are and how we are helping students to use those platforms responsibly. And finally, we get into the levels of behaviors and responsibilities. Every level has different seriousness to it, and there are response options for each level. And finally, for particular infractions, particular infractions, we sort of cite the level and what we will, first of all, and then later on, what we can do as a consequence for those behaviors. And a lot of this hasn't really changed. I think what changes in this book is how we follow up with students and how we prepare them for the expectations and the things we include in the code of conduct, the comprehensive inclusion of issues. We go from pre-K all the way up to grade 12, and we address dignity for all students, reporting systems, harassment, hazing, bullying, cyberbullying. We address the SAVE Act. The athletic code of conduct is addressed here, and we define almost every word that we think that people might have questions about throughout. So we have several pages of definitions, and we have appendices where it cites our research, and it's a pretty complete document as such.
I just wanted to comment that I haven't had a chance to read it cover to cover, but I have had a chance to read portions of it and skim through it a bit, and by all accounts, my observation, it appears to be really a quite thorough document, and I'm excited to see its implementation in the district. Kudos to everybody who had a hand in putting this together.
Agreed. Thank you. Fair, please. I'm going to leave it there unless there are any other questions.
Any questions from the audience?
There's a lot there. Do you want to find this, Alicia? I'm going to ask Alicia now to address the board and anyone who's not listening about our reserve plan and how later on in this agenda you'll be voting to move certain monies from certain reserves to other reserves. It's something we do every year this time, and I think Alicia's done a really fine job, and I support and recommend her recommendations for these movements of money. We find ourselves with a very healthy fund balance, and we have some reserves that were strategically placed in our budget, and you'll hear about those a little bit later, to put the district in a really good situation for years to come. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Alicia.
So I just want to clarify, this is a public hearing,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Officially.
Officially.
Yes.
So a portion of this you're gonna see as we move through, primarily recommendation one as I move through it, is the requirement of the public hearing this evening. There are several other recommendations that are not a legal requirement of the public hearing, but we felt it was important to review those recommendations with the board this evening prior to the resolutions being passed further along in the agenda. So what I'll do is I know the board has the PowerPoint here. It's also on the screen for the public, but there's also in the action items under business, there's backup documentation, including a full fund balance report and notes pertaining to the slides that we'll present this evening. So on slide 2, with the recommendations this evening for the board's consideration, there was recommendations this evening, or actually as a result of our November Audit, Budget, and Finance Committee meeting, where we took a look at our long-range strategic financial plan. And as you know, we have a financial plan that well exceeds 5 years. We look 10 years out into the future. So right now, our long-range financial that is also aligned to our long-range capital plan goes out to 2031. So it gives us a nice trajectory of where our finances and our planning is going to take us. And that's also aligned to our academic plan. So with that involved, we take a hard look at our reserves and the initiatives that we have going on over the long term. We take a hard look at how we fund our reserves and how we utilize those reserves. So ideally, in a reserve plan, we would like to have a reserve plan where we have the mechanisms to build monies in those accounts to be used for specific purposes, and also have the ability to expend them to minimize the impact on our taxpayers for things associated with improving our facilities, paying for retirement contributions, and things of that nature. But we also want to design a cycle where we're able to build new reserves and fund new reserves so that we always have a strong reserve plan and a financial strategy moving into year after year for the next 5 to 10 years. So the recommendations that you'll hear this evening involve the transfer of amounts between established reserves. You'll also see a recommendation for the transfer of reserve amounts to the 23-24 general fund to support budgetary appropriations. And lastly, you'll also see a transfer of projected unassigned fund balance to our established reserves. And lastly, we have a final recommendation that involves the closure of fully expended reserves so that we can kind of keep our financial plan cleaned up, especially when reserves are no longer in use. So with that, I'll go to slide 3. So as you'll see, recommendation 1, and this is the public hearing requirement. We'd like to transfer $1,299,220 from the reserve for retirement contributions, which is our ERS, our employment retirement system, to our newly established construction capital reserve. And if you recall, this was the new reserve that was recently approved by our voters at our May 21st vote. And again, these recommendations are a part of this long-term strategy in our capital project development. So according to General Municipal Law and Education Law 3651, a public hearing is required in order to transfer monies from this ERS, Retirement Contributions Reserve, into any other reserve. And so that's why we're here in part this evening, is to meet the requirements under the public hearing portion of our meeting. This also aligns to, as I update the reserve plan and I look at our financial plan, one of the things I do is look at our expense history. So the recommendations that we're making this evening also better align this reserve moving forward to our 5-year trend in expense for our employer contribution rate. And then it also allows us to begin to fund this new reserve. We do have a very large project slated for planning in about 4 years' time from now in 2028. So,
can I interject? That's
sure.
what we're calling the large capital project. It was the $10 million fund balance established by the voters.
So that recommendation is really the public hearing portion requirement of this evening, but I thought I would just walk through the rest of the recommendations. Recommendation 2 involves the transfer of $2,163,336 from our workers' compensation reserve, again, to that newly created construction capital reserve. So this transfer only requires board approval, but I must say this is the one reserve that is sort of a look back. So under the workers' comp rule, we can either transfer money at the beginning of a fiscal year or at the end of the fiscal year. So we're choosing to do it now that we have a better idea of where our finances are ending up for year end. Although tentative, we have a good idea now versus making those recommendations based on our audit budget finance, say last November. So we wait to the close of our fiscal year. So with these 2 recommendations at this point in time, with these 2 transfers, that will build this new reserve to approximately $3.4 million out of the $10 million authorization that we have in place now. This is ideal, as Dr. Crankshaw mentioned. We are planning for a fall 2026 referendum for a large capital project that is in the neighborhood between $40 and $50 million. So taking the time now to build this reserve up to $10 million, this lowers the level of borrowing we would have to do in the future, and it lessens the taxpayer impact for the cost of construction over time. So this project would be construction from 2028 when we have a lot of debt coming off of our books in addition, and it would run through 2030 approximately based on approvals and that. So it's important that we start to fund this reserve. Recommendation 3 is to close the fully expended reserves, as I mentioned. We have the repair reserve, and we have the construction capital reserves from 2010, 2021, and our bus purchase reserve that was from 2015. The balances in all of these reserves are 0. They've been fully expended. Under law, we are not allowed to replenish these reserves. They've lived out their useful life. So we're requesting the Board of Education tonight to approve the closures of those reserves. We'll keep a historical record as part of our reserve plan, but they'll now begin to come off of our financials moving forward. Recommendation 4, so this is another one involving our workers' compensation reserve. As you'll recall, back to the 23-24 budget development, we plan to appropriate $400,000 from the workers' compensation reserve to support our revenue picture for 23-24. This is the time of year, 60 days, per general municipal law 6J, where we can transfer monies from this reserve into the 23-24 general fund budget to use towards budget appropriations. As defined under this law, they consider the fiscal year ending August 31st. So 60 days prior to August 31st, with board approval, we can make that necessary transfer into our revenues to support the expenses associated with our 23-24 budget. So it's a little bit in the reverse direction. Usually we're looking ahead. For this recommendation, we're looking back a bit to support what soon will be last year's fiscal year budget being 23-24. But again, just to say this was part of our original planning to use these dollars when we planned the 23-24 budget at the time. And then lastly, recommendation 5. Just to start with, as we know, and then certainly our members of our Audit Budget Finance Committee know, this is a tentative projection in terms of where our overall fund balance is going to end up as of June 30th. We go through our audit over the summer, which we'll have a better idea as we work to close all of our accounts and finish final accounting entries where we'll ultimately end up. But this is a close projection at this point in time. So the recommendation is to transfer from unassigned fund balance $4,161,531 to establish reserves as follows. So to transfer $150,000 into our tax certiorari reserve, which will bring the projected balance just under $200,000 as of June 30th, plus any interest accruals that will be added to this reserve when we close out for the fiscal year. This is important at this juncture because when we have any type of major tax certiorari, we're allowed to reserve for reasonable expenses 4 years worth of a certiorari and then be able to set us up if there's a pending judgment that we ultimately have to pay out. And for the audience, that's a tax petition. Someone has challenged their tax assessment, and we're usually in partner with the city. When there's a resolution, there's the potential that the district has a portion to pay back in terms of multiple years of tax refunds. So we do have an outstanding tax petition going from years 2020-21 through 23-24. And the last calculation that was done with interest was about $171,000, and interest accrues daily. So we have to start to think ahead that this could settle sooner versus later, so this reserve will help cover us if we do get that final judgment and pay out that tax certiorari payment. The second piece to this would be to transfer just over $4 million to that new construction reserve again, which after all of the transfers based on these recommendations are complete, that'll bring that reserve up to just under $7.5 million. So out of $10 million, it allows us to bring that almost 3/4 fully funded at this point in time at the end of this year. I recommend at this time that we leave, based on my projection at this time, we leave about $3.5 million unassigned as projected currently, which is about an 8% unassigned fund balance. So by law, it's still currently, school districts are allowed to maintain 4% unassigned fund balance. All advocacy has proved to be successful, including this year, but it's so early right now, and we have to go through our final end of the year closeout and go through our audit. So I think it's prudent in one aspect at this time to leave an 8% unassigned fund balance until we know our final numbers. But also it's not a bad thing. We have federal grants that are ending at June 30th, our ARP grants, our COVID relief funding. So to have a little bit of cushion that's above the 4%, it just makes conservative sense right now. So that would be my recommendation in terms of the percentage in which we leave the unassigned fund balance. As part of our normal procedure, once our audit's done and complete and we're at the draft financial statement review, we will bring the results of our audit and our financial statements back to the Audit Budget and Finance Committee for your review and approval of the recommendations that we would make at that time. And then we'll bring it to the September board meeting. So you'll hear the final results then, and then hopefully accept our financial reports there. What's not on the presentation tonight that you will see in the resolutions, in which you'll consider later this evening, it's the same resolution that we pass each year. There is a sentence in there that says, should, as we go through this audit and financial statement preparation, outside of my projection, if there are still amounts that remain over 4%, that you're giving us approval to move those to established reserves, we would of course run those recommendations through Audit, Budget, and Finance, but it allows us to have that resolution in place for our auditors to make the necessary entries that we need to make over the summer to have our financial statements issued. So you will also see that as part of the resolution later this evening on there. And with that, I'll entertain any questions that you have. Sound pretty familiar from Audit, Budget, Finance?
And I was just going to suggest that we go back to item B on the public hearing. I think we want to close the public hearing on the Code of Conduct and Restorative Supports. And as a reminder, there is an extended period until June 27th for written comments to be submitted to the district about that. Okay, so moving along. Okay, so under item D, we'll close the public hearing on the transfer of amounts from the reserve for retirement contributions. We've got one more public hearing. This is on the 2024-25 district-wide school safety plan. Pursuant to education law, members of the public may submit written comments on the 24-25 district-wide safety plan to district administration for 30 days after this public hearing. Following the conclusion of the 30-day comment period, the Board of Education will vote on adoption of the updated safety plan at its August 2024 business meeting. So, Alicia, you going to present this?
Yes. So I will apologize up front. The board is probably very familiar with this presentation, but I'm required to walk through the major components of the plan. So again, I apologize if my back is to you, but I'll try to call out the slides as we move along. So the district and building safety plan, as we know, emergencies and violent instances occur, and our role is to make sure that we have a comprehensive plan in place where it provides the necessary procedural information and training involved in the event that we have an emergency and need to respond. So under Commissioner's Regulation 155.17, districts are required to develop a district-wide school safety plan designed to prevent or minimize the effects of serious violent incidents and emergencies, and to facilitate the coordination necessary on behalf of the district with local and county resources in the event of such incidences or emergencies. I will say that the district-wide safety plan is consistent with the more detailed, comprehensive building level plans that our principals are charged with developing with their building level safety teams and submitting those to the state education department. Building level, as we know, are confidential documents, so you won't see this presentation on the district-wide safety plan is pretty high level, where building level plans are much more detailed and confidential in nature. This plan is also designed to be responsive to the needs of our schools and to our families, and to provide particular information on how we coordinate all types of different emergencies that may occur, including man-made disasters, natural disasters, really anything, any type of threat. This is covered under our SAFE law, and Project SAFE is really the umbrella in which we plan that expects a comprehensive planning effort that addresses prevention, response, and recovery with respect to a variety of emergencies. So the major components of the plan, and the board does have the full detailed comprehensive plan is part of your board packet. I will say, and I want to thank Lorena, it is already an HTML format on our website as well. So there is a clickable format right on our website as well that you can go through. So the identification of the district-wide school safety team is a requirement. The board will approve that membership at their July 2nd meeting. That does include a board member, students, instructional staff, support staff, administration, transportation, community members, school safety personnel, and medical personnel. We also have a section on risk reduction, prevention, and intervention strategies, and this really speaks to the type of training that we provide to our staff and our safety teams. Things like on opening day, principals review the building level safety plan with their faculty. We do all types of training on superintendent's conference day, right down to stop the bleed, CPR. We practice drills throughout the year, as everyone knows. We also, as part of our liability insurance, we're through Utica National, who just has such a breadth of training available. So we do a lot of online training and offer sessions throughout the year as well. Response includes notification and activation in response to an emergency, an incident, or a situational response. And really a situational response is how the district obtains emergency assistance, what resources are available, protective actions, evacuation protocols, and as well as we are required to offer components of violence prevention training as well as these 12 components in mental health training for all staff. And we usually meet that requirement through some of the online training platforms that we do at the beginning of each year. Recovery includes district support for the buildings that have endured an emergency, and this is where we really utilize the value of our crisis response teams. Continuity of operations. This was really under labor law that had to be included as of April 2021. And it really speaks to prevention, mitigation, protection, and preparedness and response. The largest part of this section of the plan is it identifies essential staff that continue to work key functions during a public health emergency like COVID. So we had to identify that per labor law there. It also talks about having sufficient supplies for PPE. It describes our command center, the various roles and responsibilities that key personnel have to address a public health emergency, and we've all been through that with COVID. The other piece, and you'll see a little bit more later on, also ensures digital equity for employees and students, ensuring that there's access to technology devices and internet connectivity in the event of a public health emergency, and that the continuity of learning is in place in a remote or hybrid models of instruction. So some of this is still recent. You would have seen this on last year's presentation as well. I'm not going to go all the way through it. You have, everyone knows about the snow day pilot. Probably the latest addition is the requirement to have an emergency remote instruction plan included in our district-wide safety plan. So that came effective with the 23-24 school year, and it is part of the commissioner regs who define remote instruction. And this plan, there's 6 components of it. I'll go through it in a minute, but it's really to ensure regular and substantive teacher-student interaction with appropriately certified teachers. So I won't go all the way through this. These are the 6 requirements of the emergency remote plan, which I believe is slide 6. It is detailed more beginning on page 41 of our district-wide safety plan. But again, it's all about access and equity and ensuring that students can participate in both synchronous and asynchronous instruction with a certified teacher. Our plan speaks to how we deliver those services, the number of minutes of instructional time, pupil personnel services, so Nikki Lent's world in terms of special ed students, how we still continue to service our special ed students in the event that we are in remote instruction. So if you'd like to read more, it does begin on page 41, excuse me. And then other recent changes. These are new this year. So the Board of Regents met in April. And for the last couple of years, there's been a task force for school safety recommendations. 2 sets of recommendations were brought to the Board of Regents, and it looks like they are going to be fully approved at the July Board of Regents meeting. So I just wanted to go through that for a minute. At the July meeting, these are approved. SED has already notified us to start embedding these in our safety plans because they do become, the first set become effective as of July 31st this year. So we have to embed trauma-informed practices and language into our plans, both building and district-wide safety plans. What's probably newest after so many years of practicing drills is we have to give assurances that drills now happen with trauma-informed, age and developmentally age-appropriate manner. And they also have to be announced moving forward. And these measures are being put in place to avoid any type of undue stress or mental health issues for our staff or our students. So it's very cognizant, again, of how we make someone feel when we are practicing in the event of an emergency. So again, we have to notify them in advance of a drill, and I would say sometimes we do that informally, and we usually follow up afterwards using Parent Square. So moving forward as a team, we discussed is that building principal can, through announcements, can let their staff and students know minimally 24 hours in advance, and then after a drill is conducted, we would still follow our normal procedures in using Parent Square to let families know that we did conduct whatever type of drill, especially as it pertains to our lockdown drills. So that's our family note. And then we do this as well already. There's annual notification to families regarding our safety protocols, specifically what communication pathways and notifications do we use to let families know what our safety protocols are, to the extent that we can provide that information. So again, we don't go overly detailed in terms of how we respond to an emergency situation, but there's enough information provided that they can also plan. And so we've started it with the SEAL team last year in terms of making sure that they had access to community resources, but also encouraging our families to have their own family safety plan in the event that children are sent home, they're dismissed early, that they can have a plan in place that's practiced within their own family. So we'll continue to do that. And then for the principals and for Dave Wood, there's a requirement now in our building level safety plans that we have to have much more detailed floor plans and area maps that are submitted with our plan. Everything from utilities marked to exits, a better compass on the map, so we'll work on that over the summer as well. The other thing that's new this year is that specific regulatory language is being implemented that specifically bus drivers and attendants have to be members on our district-wide safety team, and it is recommended for building level teams. And also any policy that speaks to how we train teachers and staff on safety, we now have to make sure that we include that language for bus drivers and attendants moving forward. So again, it's 99.9% that this is going to be passed at the July Regents. But for us planning ahead this evening, our plan has already incorporated those changes. So when you review that document or you go to our website, all of these new regulatory changes have already been included in our updated plan. Next year, it's all about terminology clarification, which is, again, we've used shall for so long. So I just list the terms that would become effective July 1st, 2025. And it's just to avoid any type of confusion in how people use terms and how they define them. So that's a less of a change for us a year from now. And at least we have a year to update our materials versus this year where we've had several weeks. So that's one reason why we also are doing the public hearing this evening, because these are major changes this year. So we thought it best to go through the public hearing this evening, go through our 30-day public comment, and then come back to you at the August meeting for approval. And that still meets our SED requirements to submit our safety plans by on October 1st. So I just wanted to share tonight that our plan is fully compliant and it has been updated through these July 31st changes that we're expecting at the end of July to be published. Some other initiatives, Again, we've done some press releases recently regarding safety initiatives in the district and the updates that we've made. We've added an SRO this past year. Dr. Crankshaw and myself do sit on a Fulton County emergency team that really has other regional superintendents, law enforcement, safety professionals, and HFM BOCES personnel on this region-wide team. We also recently used the remainder of our Smart Schools bond money. We had just over $1 million from the state in allocation. So we have had a single point of entry for visitors for a while, but we've updated our door access and controls. We've also updated our interior and exterior cameras. We've replaced or added over 245 cameras as part of this update. We have automated a brand new lockdown system. So our lockdown system, there was parts of it previously that we had to manually call 911. There was other systems that we had to manually shut down. Now it's fully automated. Someone calls a lockdown, a call center is automatically called, 911's called, door access is terminated, so we don't have doors opening. So we also, as part of that system, added a blue light strobe system. So if we do have visitors that are coming up to a building that may be in a lockdown, these strobes are going off to warn somebody off not to enter the building and stay back. So that was over $1 million. Those upgrades in terms of systems and cameras and lockdown systems and all of that was fully paid for by this Smart Schools bond money. So there was no taxpayer impact, there was no expense to the general fund budget. We've also added a Raptor visitor management system to screen visitors. And we still continue to use ID badges, and we're continuously monitoring access to our buildings too. What is appropriate access that our staff needs based on the job functions that they perform. And then coming for 24-25, the administrative team, we're gonna spend some more time this summer. We have the TAP app, and we're gonna be focusing first on adding mobile notifications to our emergency communication system. So if someone wants the app on their phone and we go into some type of emergency, they can receive a mobile notification on their phone. And there's a lot of other components in terms of threat assessment, behavioral assessments. So that's something that we'll be looking at after we implement the mobile notification aspect of the TAP app. And then we'll continue to use Parent Square for emergency notifications. That is and will continue to be our primary source of communication in the event we dismiss early or there's other forms of emergencies that potentially could take place. And that is it. Are there any questions? And again, Lorraine has already set up the public comment on the website, and there is, again, an email address there as well. So we're taking public comments for 30 days after this evening. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. If there's no other comments or questions, then what I'd like to do is move to item F, close this public hearing for the 2024-25 school safety plan, and we will follow up later in the year with a board action on that. Next up, we have a possible executive session. I'm looking for a motion to enter into an executive session at 7:50 p.m. for the following purpose, and that is to be discussing the employment history of a particular person. Is there a motion? Art, second. Jen? Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? We are in executive session. We'll retire to the media center. Meeting at 8:05 p.m. We'll move on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, we have a grant. It's really exciting. It's the LEAPS grant, Office of Mental Health in Fulton, Montgomery County. There's a link there to some of the timeline of efforts that we're going through. I would ask you to keep that just to yourselves. It's not really for public consumption, you know. But it's early in the game. But we did learn that we have $660,000 coming for the next 5 years to have after-school programming for 3 of our schools: Pleasant Ave, Warren Street, and Knox. It's going to provide from 3 to 6 after school to 6 o'clock at night, tutoring, activities, enrichments, meals, full meals, hot meals, and so doing childcare, I suppose. But that is not the motivation of this grant, but it's a huge win for Johnstown. It's something we've been trying for, but we can't really afford. You'll see a press release coming out, I think in the newspaper in the next couple of days about this grant. It's called the LEAPS grant. We'll hear more about it. So, the COPS grant, I know, was a little bit of a concern, but I have to tell you, the COPS grant came at the request of the city, and it literally is a grant that would help fund the second SRO for the district. And I don't want you to think that I'm coming at this for a full endorsement. It's just that the grant cycle began, and I wanted to be a good partner. So, you know, it's the opinion of some that we're not even going to be eligible for such a grant because we don't have that kind of need necessarily. We're not demonstrating. It's a national grant. It's looked at in a national frame. And if you put us up against some schools, given limited money, we're not experiencing some of the problems that some schools are. So highly competitive. I think we're early in the process. And even if the grant is won, it doesn't mean we have to decide as a board to take it. Okay, and I just wanted to know that. In a way, I want to apologize because it's kind of the cart before the horse. I know it causes, you know, we're not fully maybe fleshed out. We don't have full feedback, I think, from our current SRO. So going into the second SRO can be better. I apologize if it seemed like any kind of disrespect. It was just, it's this grant business. I swear, if we get a notification of the grant, we've got to get it done by 2 weeks from the day we hear about it. So, if I could, I would move on to a matter of Briggs Field. So, the board had asked me to get a broker's opinion of the value of that land, and we're looking at somewhere around $120,000 for that acreage. And I think if you can open that link where it says broker's opinion and get a full diagram of what the land looks like, I think he puts in a striking amount that we might actually get $90,000 to $110,000 in actuality for that if we were to sell it. But the resolution, which is also a link there, provided by our attorney Honeywell, states you can't sell it anyway, because if you decide to stop using it as green space for ball games and that sort of thing, it automatically reverts to the city. So it will inevitably, if we don't use it, and we have committed not to use it, it will revert back to the city. And I think those talks are going to be throughout the summer. And I'm certainly involved with the board in that. All that when it comes doesn't require a public vote. And I wanted to keep you aware of that. And I think, what? Oh, you're good. Okay, just I think that's it. And that's all I have.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Craig. I do not believe we have any employee leadership reports this evening. I do not have a board report to share. We do not have any committee reports to share, and no correspondence. Okay, moving up at the scheme here. So we have the consent agenda statement. In an effort to expedite the business of the Board of Education, but in no way meant to diminish the importance of each item, a consent agenda may be used for the items in this section. Items may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of any one board member. Items not removed will be adopted by general consent without debate. Any removed items may be taken up either immediately after the consent agenda or placed later on the agenda at the discretion of the board. So we have consent action business. Item A, prior board meeting minutes. B, warrants for April 2024. Treasurer's report, item C. Item D, general fund budget modification, donation for school library, the class of 2021. E, general fund budget modification, donation from GJSD Music Department by Johnstown Music Support Group. F, second emergency contract for provision of transportation services. G, contract for health services, Amsterdam School District. H, first emergency contract for provision of transportation. We also have consent action personnel. Item A, abolishments, leaves of absence, resignations, miscellaneous creations, adjustments, and appointments. And we have consent action CSE, CPSE, 504 committee placements. Item A would be approval of CSE, CPSE, 504 committee minutes. So I look for a motion to accept the consent agenda. Ron, second March. Anybody wish to remove an item for separate discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous, thank you very much. Okay, next we have action items business. We've got a number of items under action items business that include annual organizational meeting for July 2nd, the adoption of new policy 6161 for conference travel expense reimbursement, abolishment of policy 5590 expense reimbursement for travel expenses, agreement with Fund Fulton Boys and Girls Modified Lacrosse, have establishment of 2024-25 capital outlay budget, transfer of funds from the Construction Capital Reserve Fund 2023, and the approved budget transfers and establishment of capital fund budget for small capital project 2. We have the distribution of projected unassigned fund balance. We have the transfer from Greater Johnstown School District Workers' Compensation Reserve Fund and transfers between established reserves, closure of reserves. So I'd like to suggest we cluster vote this. Any objections? Okay. So I'd like a motion to combine action items 11A through J for cluster vote. Art, can I get a second? Jen, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, unanimous. Yep. Item number 12, action items personnel. We have 4 items under there. Retirement of Judy Subic, food service helper, probationary appointment of Jill Bulger, teaching assistant, memorandum of agreement with Johnstown Teachers Association, and employment agreement for Nicole Panton, director of curriculum and instruction. Again, I'd like to recommend a block vote. All I know is I've been corrected that it's not a consent agenda. So a block vote of items 12A through 12D. Can I get a motion to? Jen, second. Joelle? Any discussion? All those in favor? So we have a few items for discussion. First is the first reading of revised policy 7513, medication and personal care items. The second reading of proposal for adoption to appear on the July 2nd agenda. Any discussion about that? Questions? Next, we have the first reading of revised policy 7521, students with life-threatening health conditions. With a second reading and proposal for adoption to appear on the July 2nd agenda. Any discussion or questions about that? Next, we have the first reading of revised policy 7350, timeout and physical restraint. So we have a second reading and proposal to adopt to appear on the July 2nd agenda. And I want to note that this policy is required by law. Do we have any questions or comments about this? We also have the completion of policy manual audit, section 8000. I'm not going to read all of those. You can see them there for yourselves. That's for May and June. Another set of assignments, I'm sure, starting in July. Board self-evaluation, I believe It is complete. We should be able to review the results of that at the next meeting, Maria?
I think that you have to go in.
I'll have to go in.
Yeah, I don't have the sheets to sign.
Okay. I have not had a chance to do that. Okay, all right. Well, I can go through and take care of getting all of that, and then we can review the results at a later date.
21st, correct?
That was for the superintendent's
Oh.
evaluation. So thank you for the segue.
Sorry.
So if you can all try to finish your superintendent's super evaluation, Dr. Crankshaw, then we can finish that up. All right, so a few informational items. June 28th is the JHS commencement. This is Friday evening, 7 p.m. at Knox Field. Rain date will be Saturday, June 29th at 10 a.m. July 2nd will be our reorganizational meeting with a public hearing on the code of conduct at 6:30 p.m.
Stretched out.
Oh, right, so we just did it tonight. Sorry, I'm just reading words at this point. A little bit of administrative content. As a reminder, board members who are participating in the JHS commencement ceremony on Friday, June 28th, should report to the Knox Auditorium by 6:30 p.m. with your graduation regalia. I will note that probably all you need to do is just locate yourself in the front hall, look for everybody else, and we'll see you there. And I would encourage you to let Lorena know so that she can let Mr. Hale know how many of us will need seats. Otherwise, you find yourself standing. We will not have an executive session, and so without any further ado, we have meeting adjournment. So I look for a motion to adjourn. Joelle? March 2nd, it is, what is it?